A Republican Senate candidate in Minnesota and former NBA player may go to jail over campaign finance violations involving strippers. Royce White, who is one of several Republicans vying for the GOP nomination to run against Amy Klobuchar this fall, was just exposed by the Daily Beast for his use of campaign funds in his 2022 House primary. Reporters found hundreds of transactions amounting to tens of thousands of dollars in potentially misused funds. We have some context on that. The unusual expenses include a total of more than $100,000 in mysterious wire transfers and checks reported as paid to the campaign. Hefty tabs at spicy night spots, getaways at posh hotels in at least 7 states, thousands of dollars in limousine services, unexplained cash withdrawals, eye-popping purchases from electronics, sporting goods, clothing, and musical instrument retailers, and the Dribble Up smart basketball training app that White himself admitted might be personal use. One of the more salacious expenditures came after the 2022 primary. At 5 in the morning, 1 week after Republican Royce White lost his 2022 Minnesota congressional primary, his campaign shelled out more than $1,200 in donor funds to a vendor 1,800 miles away, not typically associated with political expenses, an all-nude strip club in Miami, Florida called Rush Cabaret. Not surprisingly, campaign finance experts were shocked by White's campaign spending, with some suggesting he may see jail time as a result. In nearly a decade of reviewing FEC disclosures, I've never seen a mess quite like White's disbursements, Jordan Leibowitz, vice president for communications at Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, told the Daily Beast. We're not talking about small stuff, said Brendan Fisher, a specialist in campaign finance law and deputy director of Documented. This takes us well outside the realm of FEC fines. This looks a lot like the kind of thing people go to jail for. Despite White's 2022 campaign finance issues, the Minnesota Republican Party just endorsed him in his campaign for Senate this cycle. And asked whether he was aware of the outrageous 2022 spending, Minnesota GOP chair David Hann told the Daily Beast on Wednesday that he was not in his office at the moment and could not comment, then hung up. And it should be noted that White has a history of promoting conspiracy theories, anti-Semitic comments, and has ingratiated himself with Republican operatives like Steve Bannon. And when asked about his potential campaign finance violations, he said, if the FEC wants to fine us, that's completely fine. There are much bigger scams with political campaigns. Cenk, I'm curious, he makes, I guess, a valid point at the end, but does that make up for how he spent his campaign funds?
Yeah. I think that if you're defending yourself by saying, well, others have done bigger scams, you might want to pick a better defense. You just admitted you did a scam, but you just think, well, what's the big deal? Others are doing bigger ones. In fact, we're gonna ask you a poll question about it in a sec, but my favorite part of the story was he's like, oh yeah, the basketball app. Yeah, that one might be personal. The strip club's not personal. Okay, that's just strict political expenditure. I mean, what self-respecting politician wouldn't get strippers during a campaign? So now the poll question we have is, do you think Minnesota Republican Party picked White because they think he's a criminal? Not despite it, but because of it. And so far, by the way, we just put it up a little while ago, tyt.com/polls. We'll put the link in the description box below, but we also have it up on our YouTube community channel. Already there's over 600 votes and 75-25. Yes, they picked him because he's a criminal. And so now you guys say, oh guys, you guys are too much. You're so biased against Republicans. But Trump has 91 charges against him. It's made him more popular. Forget like, hey, he survived it. It made him more popular. And when White talks about, well, there's bigger campaign contribution scams. Yeah, Trump's on trial for one of them. So this is about $100,000. Trump did $130,000 to Stormy Daniels and hundreds of thousands to 2 other mistresses. So yeah, he's technically right, but and again, the Republicans love that. In Lauren Boebert's primary, there was like 6 people that are competing, all Republicans, obviously, since the primary. They asked them, how many of you have been convicted criminals? And 5 out of the 6 raised their hand. So like, and then one guy must have thought, damn it, oh, I'm so screwed, I didn't commit a crime. So I think that, and putting, like, guys, you think we're just joking, but I'm not really joking. And I think that one of the phenomenons here is that Republican voters, and this is a mixed bag here, they hate the establishment so much that they're like, I'll take any outlaw against this system I despise so much, even if it's guys like this and Herschel Walker and others who are robbing them blind. Like, Steve Bannon, another criminal. His co-defendants are in prison right now because they scammed their own voters and viewers out of money that they pretended was going to build a wall, and they didn't build a wall, and they were partying on a yacht. And they're like, I don't care, take my money, because they hate the establishment so much that I think that they might even think that anyone who's a criminal might be, well, I guess they're anti-establishment, I prefer that. And so that's my crazy theory on why they keep picking criminals.
I mean, I almost think it's a little bit simpler, like this sort of draw towards criminality within the Republican Party, because they're pretty nakedly saying that they want a party in power that will violate the law in their favor because they don't agree with the laws that are oppressing them, quote unquote, like tax law or campaign finance law. And I also don't really understand why we're pretending that we have campaign finance laws in this country. Like in 2022, I mean, literally outside of Trump's current trial, in 2022, there were 3,000 campaigns that violated campaign finance laws. And literally 0 of them faced enforcement action. We did, like empirically, we know that we don't have like effective campaign finance law or campaign finance law enforcement in the United States. It's like, okay, we live in a corrupt oligarchy where money runs elections, and Citizens United destroyed the way that we run elections through money. So this, it's almost like I don't agree with him because I know he's not actually going to get fined by the FEC. It's very unlikely, even at the scope of this ridiculous spending. But like the issues that we have with campaign finance are so deep and corrupt and broken and ineffective that, like, to me, we, especially when we talk about campaign finance, it's like it's considered a reform issue, and it's like, oh, we'll make these like incremental changes, we'll increase enforcement. I personally think we're so far past that. There are effectively no laws about how you can spend money in a political campaign, because when those laws are blatantly violated, nothing happens. Like, we don't even know that anything's going to happen to Trump in the face of this very blatant, very publicized, and like very dead to rights trial that he's on. So it's kind of like, again, I think this falls into the category of things where, like, I'm confused about the way we talk about this because the evidence against the rhetoric that's being used to say, like, oh, we should reform campaign finance law is so flat. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, we're not going to see significant changes. I seriously doubt anything is going to happen to this candidate, or this former candidate. It's I don't know. Again, this is one of these ridiculous things that's like, wow, he really spent like $2,000 at a strip club and got away with it. Nothing happened. Republicans love him for it. It's more locker room stuff. It's more like, I want a candidate who's going to spend my money to go to a strip club. Like, yeah, that's what we're dealing with.
I disagree with Jules. I think there are some pretty strict rules on how you can spend it, but also how you have to report it. And I think Trump is a different example just because he's so big. He's such a big force in politics. And I think that might be a little too difficult for them to navigate. And it's also, there's like New York's involved. It's a little complicated. This, I looked at the report, almost, I'd say 99% of his 2022 filing, 99% of the entries were just classified wrong. You can't, like, it wasn't even clear who he was paying. Like they say in this article, but I don't think it really sums up exactly how bad and messy this was. He was the recipient and the spender. And then in the memo, in the description, he would just put the receipt or like the credit card code or whatever his receipt on his credit card said. You can't do that. You have to fill out a lot of information about every recipient of campaign funds. And if it's a contractor, you have to put all this other information. Everything has to be reported. He very well could go to jail for this because it is just so impressively bad. It looks like somebody who had no idea what they were doing, which in his case is who he is as a politician. And it was staffed, a campaign staffed, and also, unfortunately, overseen by people who didn't know what they were doing. The fact that anybody could file that is just wild to me. Having worked in even just the C4, like political organization space for almost a decade now, even just as a worker, you know how strict the FEC is on filings and deadlines and every single thing you have to report. It is tedious, and they just didn't do anything. It's remarkable.
I actually agree with both of you, and so the way that I can do that is that, Jordan, you come at it from the perspective of someone who's worked in progressive politics, and I was a progressive candidate, and every progressive candidate and organization knows they have to be inordinately careful. They have to be super careful, because that is the one group, both Democrat and Republican members of the FEC can't wait to rule against. They're never going to do it for Democrats, and they're never going to do it for Republicans that are establishment on either side, because they're deadlocked and they could just have their own party vote no. But when it comes to progressives, Democrats are like, oh, you guys want to throw progressives under the bus, so they stop running primaries against us. Oh, yes, yes. So we have to be super careful. But Jules is right. I mean, 300 and they don't do anything, right? And in fact, on Trump, remember, the statute of limitations on the campaign finance reform problem that he had ran out. They didn't even bother doing that. This is because he filed fraudulent business records related to the campaign finance violation, right? And so, and by the way, on that, MAGA, like, we are not like the establishment. The establishment says don't prosecute anyone outside of Trump and some lunatic Republicans like Royce White. MAGA says don't prosecute anyone. Don't prosecute the bad guys. Don't prosecute Trump. Criminality for everyone, right? We say no, prosecute Trump and all the other bad guys. And I don't give a damn if they're Republicans or Democrats. Actually enforce the law. This is madness that they could just violate the law left and right. And guys, even if you think, okay, look, the Republican voters don't necessarily want criminals and don't necessarily want people robbing them and going to strip clubs with their money, etc. But they do want people who are a little mentally unbalanced. Sorry, but they want the guy who believes the conspiracy theories that the election was stolen and QAnon and all their problems are based on these guys who secretly run the world or those guys who crossed the border. They are dying for conspiracy theories. So when they see a lunatic like Royce White, they think, criminal, not criminal, goes to strip clubs. But I don't care, as long as he's crazy just like me and believes the crazy conspiracy theories. So that's why they keep picking guys like this. And Steve Bannon thinks, oh, he's a criminal just like me, so he'll break the law whenever we want him to and when we need him to. And he also thinks, oh, it's a black guy, so we'll get to pretend we're in favor of black guys because we found this one lunatic black guy, right? So I think that's how this game is played. And so it's a funny story, but it's also, it's really, if you're a Republican and you're not embarrassed that this is your Senate candidate, Klobuchar is such an establishment hack. You can't find one sane Republican in Minnesota who could beat her in a state that is still blue, but it's not like you can't possibly win. Many Republicans have won in Minnesota. And instead you run this corrupt, moronic ass clown. All right, go ahead. And this is exactly the kind of guy who will lose because he has all the problems of Trump without the charisma and the publicity of Trump.
I think you're also making a really good point about how it really does end up coming down to who the base's voters will vote for, because seemingly a lot of these issues have been shunted by both parties to just say, well, we'll figure it out at the ballot box. Like the voters are the ones who will decide whether or not this is a problem for the country. Republicans do this, but the Democrats do this all the time. And so it's this shift towards, it actually doesn't matter that much what the rules are as long as your party will support you. And we see Republicans essentially, that is their safety net. That is the entirety of their safety net, that Congress, the Republicans in Congress with a majority will never ever prosecute any Republican for any wrongdoing, with like these very, very minor, internal exceptions. But in general, it is this very frustrating problem where we don't particularly have the same rules and the same enforcement of those rules as we have for a long time, because it really is like the people who are in charge of enforcing these rules are kind of too afraid to do it, or emphatically don't want to do it. Like, I think Democrats are afraid of it. Republicans don't want to do it. But it leads to the same thing, which is that, like, yeah, you can kind of do anything if you are voted into office. That's literally Trump's entire game plan right now, is just make it in and then everything goes away. And it's crazy because we've all sort of like accepted that that's there isn't this like huge push outside of the court cases to change that, and the court cases are it's up in the air. Like, I don't feel hopeful that we're going to see significant like change or reform or punishment for people who do violate campaign finance law, violate the law in general as elected officials or as candidates. I really do think it comes down to, maybe it's okay to prevent people who are criminals from running for office. That doesn't seem like a controversial thing to say, but it clearly is within the system that we're experiencing.
Yeah, there it is. It's 2024 when it's controversial to say maybe criminals shouldn't run for office.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.